Welcome to the Success with FMC Fall Products webinar. My name is Jordan Brisebois, and I am an FMC product manager based in Gravelbourg, Saskatchewan. I have more than 6 years of experience working with growers, retailers, and wholesalers in Western Canada, and also enjoy helping out on the family farm whenever I can. We are so excited to have you join us today.
Rachel Evans is FMC's technical sales agronomist for Southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Rachel holds a Master's of Plant Science degree from the University of Manitoba and is a certified crop advisor. She has a diverse consulting background in the areas of plant and soil science and is here to provide solutions for all of FMC's customers. Nolan Kowalczyk will be presenting today, and he is our technical sales agronomist for Alberta and Northern Saskatchewan. Nolan has over 25 years of experience in the retail, wholesale, and manufacturing sides of the agriculture industry. Nolan brings strong agronomic knowledge and leadership in order to provide solutions for growers and retailers throughout Western Canada. Next slide, please, Nolan. We'll be covering 3 topics in today's webinar. We recognize at FMC that this was a tough year for farmers with a devastating lack of moisture throughout most of the West and well below average crop conditions. We also felt with recent rains across much of Western Canada, and certainly not all of them, that it was pertinent that we give our customers the proper information regarding the reasons why a fall application is important and how our brands can play an integral role in that. Today, we will discuss why fall is the best time to control weeds, talk about the importance of a strong post-harvest burn-off with our Express brands, and finally, wrap up with how focus applied in the fall can give you a great start to next year's crop. And with that, I'll pass the baton over to Nolan Kowalczyk.
Thanks, Jordan. I'd like to thank you all for coming on the call today. So with no further ado, just like to talk a little bit more about kind of in my mind, I guess the 4 key benefits of a fall application. I'm going to kind of go into a little bit more detail in the upcoming slides on each of these, but the 4 key benefits of a fall application, first and foremost, being able to conserve some soil moisture, and we'll talk a little bit more how a post-harvest application can help in that. Talk a little bit more about preserving readily available soil nitrogen. It's been a kind of a dry year here, and maybe we haven't used as much fertilizer, but definitely with some later weed growth, we'll talk a little bit more about the importance of that. Talk a little bit more about decreasing the susceptibility to insects. And last but not least, talk about kind of, focusing in on some of our perennial and winter annual weed biologies and, taking advantage of, getting systemic herbicides moving with nutrients into the roots. And so, obviously I kind of struggle with this one. It's been quite a year, right? As the map on the right shows, and no one needs to be reminded of this, but it was disastrously dry throughout much of the West. I guess as we head into the fall, one glimmer of light or hope for next year is the harvest is it's coming off. We are receiving moisture. Maybe sometimes it isn't the moisture we all are wanting. I got hailed out in Airdrie here last Thursday, but there is moisture, there is rain in a lot of areas. There's hopefully a bit of replenishment, getting things off to somewhat of a decent and optimistic start in 2022. But unfortunately, as we're getting some of this moisture now, guess what? Weeds are growing, and we're getting large kochia developing, lots of volunteer canola developing, and many others, right? So a fall application really helps to reduce the spring weed biomass, resulting in more available moisture and nutrients for spring crops. And so to the left here of the screen is a University of Nebraska-Lincoln study, which has identified that basically 800 pounds of water is used when 1 pound of winter annual weed biomass is produced. So if you kind of, put it in retrospect, so a typical field produces approximately 500 pounds of winter annual weed biomass at the time of a spring planting. So if you do the math of how much moisture has been used to produce that weed biomass, it equates to 1.75 acre inches of soil water being used, or approximately about 25,000 gallons of water per acre. This is significant in springs where moisture is scarce and we start off dry. Next, being able to preserve, readily available soil land. With it being so dry throughout the season, fertilizer utilization by crops, it hasn't been the same as it has in past years. That being said, as we've got some moisture and some midsummer, early fall weed growth, winter annual weeds can use up nitrogen that we're trying to bank for spring seeded crop development. A fall application results in a more readily available soil end for the spring crop to use for development. Winter annual weeds are responsible for the loss of key nutrients in the soil, specifically nitrogen. And so a 2017 Kansas State University study across 14 sites showed that the average N uptake from winter annual weeds was about 16 pounds of N per acre. So placing a dollar amount of that, this loss of 16 pounds of N to today's nitrogen prices equals around $4.96 an acre. So, roughly $5 an acre that you're able to utilize for post-harvest burn-off. You've got rid of your weeds. You're going to get your spring crop off to that much better of a start. The other third key reason here is decreasing the susceptibility to insects. And so, this is one post, as you can see from this Twitter post on the left, from Marcel Van Staveren from Southeast Saskatchewan area. There's just a post about his canola crop and just the onslaught of flea beetles that were very prevalent this fall. And there's a whole host of different Twitter feeds kind of, making this claim. Adult flea beetles feed on canola leaves, stems, pods, and fall emerged weeds. They then find refuge in the plant residue, the shelter belts in association with canola stubble, and volunteer cruciferous plants to survive the winter months. They appear as adults again in the spring and use the available early weeds to feed until that host crop emerges. So winter annuals and volunteers not only serve as a key food source in the fall for winter survival, but provide a refuge unto which they can survive the winter cold. So as we kind of move from summer to fall, you got overwintering insects, egg laying. A fall application provides enhanced control of winter annuals and other undesirable weeds, making you less susceptible to overwintering detrimental insects. So, reducing any potential food source for overwintering insects can only help our cause going forward into the spring. And, last but not least here, kind of as the last key reason for the best reason to control weeds in the fall here is herbicides move with nutrients into the roots. Fall is the best time for weed control. Considering what weeds you're targeting, annuals, perennials, biennials will allow you to pick the most efficacious products based on weed target and the timing that the product will be most efficacious. Fall is the best time and the most economical time to control perennial weeds like dandelions. And, we saw that this spring where, burn-offs were skipped and dandelions were developing. As the days get shorter and the temperature cools, this triggers biennial and perennial winter annual weeds to move carbohydrates to their root systems. So, it's this storage of sugar is what's preparing them to overwinter and give them the energy to reproduce next spring. Application of systemic products like express brands, will be highly effective. Because winter annuals start to develop or start to germinate in the fall and form rosettes to overwinter, controlling them in the fall post-harvest not only reduces populations next spring, but allows for more efficient use of herbicides and cultural practices during the growing season. Applying express brands to winter annuals like stinkweed narrow-leaved hawksbeard, flicksweed, and shepherd's purse in the fall allows the greatest efficacy preventing these weeds from establishing in the fall and being, much larger and harder to control in the spring. And so now as we start to think about spring germinating weeds, some of the key early germinating weeds each spring tend to be, cleavers, downy brome, kochia, foxtail barley, lamb's quarters, wild mustard. And then you get that kind of later next flush of weeds, which are typically, green and yellow foxtail, barnyard grass, redroot pigweed, and wild oats. So utilizing an extended control, soil applied product like Focus, which requires moisture for activation in the fall, ensures that when the snow melts next spring, the product's activated and readily available for uptake by the roots of the early germinating spring weeds. And so some, key fall application tips. We want to ensure to apply to actively growing weeds. Growth is essential for herbicide uptake and efficiency. Weeds are damaged at harvest. They need time to accumulate that new leaf tissue, and this is essential for herbicide uptake and efficacy. So using 6 inches of new growth as a rough guide. Spraying after a frost. Frost damaged weeds are not healthy and will not take up the herbicide. You should delay spraying if leaf tissues are blackened, they're browned, dark green, because these are signs of cold temperature damage. Leaves should be a vibrant green, shiny, pliable, and look for new growth. And timing and weather conditions. With post-harvest burn-off products, spray in the late afternoon, or in the late morning, or afternoon, when temperatures are warmer and heavy dew is off the plant. Generally, the recommendation is to apply post-harvest burn-off products prior to October 1st. You're ideally trying to target when the temperatures are above 10 degrees Celsius and rising on days with predicted highs above 15 degrees or more for post-harvest burn-off products. Bright sunny days are ideal for moving these herbicides to the roots. And for our extended control soil applied products, you want to apply them before the ground is frozen prior to snowfall. So now in the next segment of the presentation, we're going to kind of go into a few more product specifics here. And so I'm going to kind of cover off now the Express brands. And so we're going to talk about Express SG, which is our straight tribenuron offering. And for those of you that utilize the Precision Pack, our customized solution for grower bags for exact acres for your field, you can get the equivalent called NC0050 through the Precision Pack. Express FX, which is basically our Express SG, plus a full active ounce of dicamba, also known through the Precision Pack is DB878. And then Express Pro, which is basically our Express SG, plus our metsulfuron methyl. And we'll talk about each of these in a little more detail, which is known through the Precision Pack as NC00439. And so holistically, the benefits of the Express brands is, it really comes down to, as already mentioned, because the fall is when, biennial and perennial winter annual weeds are triggered to move carbohydrates and sugars directly to the root. Application of Express brands allows the herbicide to move with the downward movement of the carbohydrates and sugars directly to the root, resulting in good control. As you can see in this chart here, adding Express to glyphosate, so basically the brown bar here is glyphosate, and then the red bars are showing kind of the addition of Express to glyphosate and the overall enhanced control over glyphosate alone. So as you can see in this chart, adding Express to glyphosate enhanced the overall control of dandelions over 30% over glyphosate alone. So we moved it from 50% with glyphosate alone to over 80% with Express plus glyphosate. Dealing with winter annuals like narrow-leaved hawksbeard, flicksweed and stinkweed in the fall, rather than letting them form rosettes over winter and being much harder to control in the spring, as is advantageous, as we've kind of already mentioned. As shown in this graph, adding Express SG to glyphosate enhanced overall weed control, over glyphosate alone on these winter annuals, and as well provided enhanced control over glyphosate alone on annuals showing volunteer Roundup Ready canola and wild buckwheat. And those are going to be some issues with volunteer Roundup Ready canola across the West this upcoming year. And so that was more specifically kind of just an overview of each brand. Express SG is a great choice for fall application. You got systemic activity from the tribennuron methyl, group 2 with a wide range of cropping flexibility for next year. The application rate is 80 acres per jug, and the recommended water volume is 5 gallons per acre. Some of the key weeds that Express SG is highly efficacious on in the fall is perennials like dandelion, winter annuals like flicksweed, narrow-leafed hawksbeard, stinkweed, and annuals like lamb's quarters, volunteer canola, and wild buckwheat. Applying Express SG with its systemic mode of action results in excellent control of winter annuals and perennials. If Express SG is applied prior to October 1st, then the following crops can be planted in the spring. So you can see, especially with commodity prices where they are and everybody's kind of sitting on the fence, not quite sure what they want to plant. Next year, Express SG offers a lot of rotational flexibility. Canola, lentils, oats, field corn, field peas, soybeans, lupins, canary seed, barley, Springer durum wheat, chickpeas, faba beans, dry beans, flax, and alfalfa, and a number of different grass crops. If the product is applied after October 1st, all of these above crops can still be planted except canola, field corn, and flax. And depending on the type of fall we have after October 1st, our account managers feel free to reach out to ourselves, the technical sales managers or account managers, and they can provide some additional guidance. Express FX is a great choice for fall application, offering systemic activity from the co-formulated package of tribennuron methyl, the Express SG, and the resistance management with the full active ounce of dicamba, a group 4 mode of action. The application rate is 40 acres a jug or 80 acres a case, and the recommended water volume again is 5 gallons an acre. Some of the key weeds that Express FX is highly efficacious on in the fall are narrow-leaved hawksbeard, dandelion, and annuals like Russian thistle, kochia, cleavers, volunteer canola, wild mustard, and wild buckwheat. Applying Express FX with its systemic modes of action results in excellent control of winter annuals and perennials. And again, kind of application timing. If Express FX is applied prior to October 1st, canola, field corn, lentils, oats, spring barley, soybeans, wheat, spring and durum wheat, or white beans can be planted the following season. If applied after October 1st, then spring barley, oats, and spring and durum wheat the following spring. And last but not least here on the Express brand lineup is our Express Pro. Express Pro is a great choice for fall application, offering again systemic activity from the co-formulated package of the tribennuron methyl and the extended control with the addition of metsulfuron methyl, a group 2 active that will provide extended weed control. The application rate is 80 acres per jug, and the recommended water volume is 5 gallons per acre. So Express Pro will provide, extended control, up to 15 days of control of narrowleaf hawksbeard, dandelion, volunteer canola, and cleavers. It will also serve as a hard punch against, controlling dandelions and emerged volunteer canola, and as well Express Pro controls scentless chamomile, and be an annual. Further, Express Pro suppresses night flowering catchfly and controls white cockle, so it is good to know that there's activity on both, since the seedlings, these are quite hard to differentiate between. When Express Pro is applied, then the following crops can be planted in the spring: spring barley, oats, wheat, spring and durum. And so as a quick kind of review of the Express brands that we just talked about applied in the fall, Express SG herbicide offers, excellent control of winter annuals, biennials, and perennial weeds, and offers a great rotational cropping flexibility the following spring, denoted by all the different crops here. And just please note, with asterisk crops, products applied prior, the product needs to be applied prior to October, eating these crops the following spring. Express FX with the Express SG and a full active ounce of dicamba provides good control of winter annuals, biennials, and perennial weeds, along with excellent resistance management with an alternate group 4 mode of action with that full active ounce of dicamba. So a great resistance management tool. And Express Pro offers strong control of winter annuals, biennials, and perennial weeds, controls white cockle, scentless chamomile, and with the 1 gram of metsulfuron methyl provides extended control of volunteer canola, cleavers, narrow-leafed hawksbeard, and dandelions. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over now for segment of the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Nolan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, sure can.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. All right, so you can move into the next slide there for me, Nolan. Just to start things off here as we move into the focus segment of the presentation, I thought we'd just do a quick refresher of what is focus herbicide, so everybody's on the same playing field here. Focus is the combination of 2 herbicide modes of action. So you've got the group 14, which is chlorpentrazone ethyl, and this is also found in our brand AIM, EC. And this is providing additional burn-off control for select broadleaf weeds. In addition, we have the group 15, peroxysulfone, which is providing that extended weed control into the spring. And this is going to be on some key broadleaf and grassy weeds. So Focus, now registered in the fall, that came into effect last year. So we're still very excited to take advantage of this newer use pattern. And so when we apply Focus in the fall with glyphosate, it's going to, with that group 14 component, we're going to have additional burn-off control on some emerged winter annual weeds like stinkweed and mustard. As well, a fall application of Focus is going to provide that early season extended control into the following spring on weeds like wild oats. In terms of opportunities for this brand, you can use Focus pre-plant or up to 3 days after seeding in winter wheat, or you can use it in the fall prior to our registered crops. So we've got that column there in the box. So field corn, lentils, soybeans, field peas, sunflowers, and spring wheat can all be planted the following spring. Field peas and sunflowers are new to this label, so this just came into effect this July. So we're very excited to have the first opportunity to tell you about this new registration for these 2 important crops for Western Canada. And then in terms of the recropping with Focus, so we've been doing lots of work. Our registration team has been working tirelessly on our labels in the last 5 years, and we have the list here, right, indicating which crops can be planted 12 months after an application of Focus. So chickpeas, flax, safflower, barley, canola, mustard, oats, and durum wheat. And then the only kind of major watch out is going to be for sugar beet growers with a 24-month recrop following a Focus application. So key features, right? You've got the multi-mode of action, the combination of the group 14 and 15, And that unique combination really of the burn off with the carfentrazone ethyl, as well as that extended weed control of the group 15 component. You can go to the next slide for me, Nolan. So when we think about planning for 2022, now is really the time to be considering which fields might be good candidates for fall applications of focus. And first, kind of a no-brainer, right, is going to be a field where a registered crop is going to be planted next spring. Then it's kind of a question of when to apply, and this is something that we spend some time going through, and there's a few things to consider here. So depending on what you're seeing in the field, you know, you may consider to take advantage of that group 14 component in a tank mix with glyphosate to target some of the emerged wheat growth. So if you're dealing with fields that do have some of those emerged winter annuals, to time the application so that we are, you know, still in those warmer afternoon temperatures so that the weeds are actively growing, and that you're going to get good efficacy out of your glyphosate and the carfentrazone ethyl. Still looking for conditions when soil temperatures are cooling to 10 degrees Celsius so that we limit the amount of microbial degradation of the group 15. So we want to make sure that we're, you know, just preventing any breakdown of that group 15 prior to the next spring. Another scenario might be if, you know, maybe burn off has already been done, or you're just sort of solely targeting that extended weed control for the following spring. Then you might consider applying the product without glyphosate kind of later in the fall, maybe closer to freeze up in order to maximize that extended control period next spring. So looking at our calendar here, you know, applications into, you know, in that October period, that means that our fall applications of focus are going to then activate, or they're going to dissolve into the soil with spring snowmelt. And that's when the clock on our extended weed control period starts, right? So after that spring thaw, now the clock has started ticking and our extended control period has begun. So major advantage of using a fall application is going to be just that improved consistency of performance, taking that guesswork of waiting for that half-inch rainfall event to occur in the spring. And going to be especially important when we're targeting some early germinating weeds, right? Like kochia, cleavers, the bromes, foxtail barley. If a fall application can't occur, and this, you know, certainly you do have the option of a spring application, still a great option. Just keep in mind that if you're targeting the early germinating weeds, say like wild oats, that you want to make sure to apply the product as early as possible in the spring to take advantage of any of those early spring moisture events. This product needs to be dissolved in soil water when those target weeds are germinating in order for them to be controlled. And then just lastly here, I'm thinking about my own backyard here in the Red River Valley, you know, as a final option, and specifically if you have customers or growers who are looking at targeting those later germinating weeds, I'm thinking green and yellow foxtail, the barnyard grasses, pigweed, buckwheat, then a spring application post-seed, up to 3 days after seeding, might be a better choice, right? Just so that you're lining up that extended weed control period with those later flushing weeds. You can move to the next slide, Nolan. So in order to, you know, just thinking about getting the best possible performance out of focus, here are just some tips and tricks as we consider best practices for fall application. So first off, right, it's just selecting the correct rate. So with this brand, the rate is broken down based on our organic matter and our soil texture. So in our coarse textured soils with organic matter of 1 to 3%, then the rate is going to be that 40 acre per jug. And in our finer textured soils, organic matter of 3 to 7%, then we're bumping up the rate to 33 acres a jug. And so shifting your focus to that checklist, you know, here's just a few other things to consider in order to, again, maximize the performance. And so when we're thinking about winter wheat as an option, you know, our experience has been to look at the 33-acre rate, just because the applications are occurring earlier in the fall. And so there could be some early fall moisture. You might get that product activated earlier, and so you could start to have some microbial degradation start to occur. And so by going with the higher rate, sort of ensures that you get you know, more product or a greater length of residual the following spring. And then just a reminder there on the winter wheat that it is pre-plant or up to 3 days after seeding. In terms of the fall applications in front of all of the other registered crops, we do want to consider applications again as soil temperatures are cooling to that 10 degrees C's. And this is to, again, just try to minimize the amount of degradation that could occur. We know that soil microbial communities tend to start to slow down once we get into cooler soil temperatures. And so that's just a consideration when we're thinking about timing. In terms of applications and fall work, so any fall field work like harrowing, cultivating, fertilizer applications, this should all be done prior to an application of focus. Unlike other actives, we want to make sure that we leave that focus herbicide as undisturbed as possible. So any of that fall field prep should be done first, and that we, again, leave that herbicide layer undisturbed. As I mentioned, it can be applied with or without glyphosate. We also have some other supported tank mix partners depending on the crop that you're going into next year. Applying again at the 10-gallon water volume per acre. This is just to ensure that we get good soil coverage, even distribution across the field. And then the last point here is to ensure that we're applying one application of focus per 12-month period. And this is also going to apply with any other products that contain peroxysulfone. So we're not the only game in town anymore. There are other products on the market that contain this active. So that would mean that, you know, a fall application of focus should not have, you know, Authority Supreme applied in the spring, or other brands like Fierce or Heat Complete, because you're doubling up now for next year. Next slide, please. So just an image here. This is from a fall trial completed in Alberta where focus was applied sort of in the middle of October, October 13th. And then we have a picture here of our untreated in mid-April. And so as you can see, the extended control of this 33-acre per jug rate of focus with glyphosate has activated with that early snowmelt. And so it's there right when those early germinating weeds are starting to get going in the spring, right? So it's a great opportunity. We see really great performance out of this timing when we're targeting those early germinating weeds. This is also a great time to address a common question that we get asked, and that's how much crop residue or weed biomass impacts focus performance. So as you can see in this picture, you know, there's a decent amount of crop residue in that field. And unlike other actives that may be used in the fall, focus does not tie up on crop residue. It will wash off with sufficient moisture. The caveat here is that as long as there's not significant amounts of bunching in the field, so you may need to just run around with a harrow just to kind of evenly distribute that straw prior to the herbicide application. And next slide, please, Nolan. And then just lastly here's another image or picture of focus, this time fall application at the 40-acre per jug rate that was applied October 15th, and the pictures were taken in May 12th, the following season. And you can see those nice clean rows down the field, really, you know, ensuring that you're getting a good start off for the crop, right? So I think the real benefit or an additional benefit is just that peace of mind of knowing that you have made an application, it's activated, it's starting to control the weeds that we're targeting, and you can have some time, take a breath in terms of having to come back sooner, right, to that field. So, all right, and just in summary here now, I think Nolan has done an excellent job of covering why fall weed control is beneficial. Certainly has many key benefits that can't be overlooked. Fall herbicide applications are going to be beneficial in terms of reducing competition for moisture and nutrients from winter annual and perennial weeds. We think of the moisture and the nutrient scenarios that many fields and farmers are going to be looking and managing into 2022. So this is certainly a very important benefit as we head into next year. Additionally, looking at reducing food sources and habitat for overwintering insects, flea beetles being a big one that many folks saw across Western Canada this fall. And then as well, thinking about just the biology of our winter annual and perennial weeds, which are preparing to overwinter, and taking advantage of that, exploiting that so that we get the best possible performance out of our herbicides this fall. Fall is going to be a great time to take advantage of the flexibility and the efficacy of the Express brand. So, if you are dealing with those problem weeds, the dandelions, the stinkweeds, the white cockles, now is really the optimum time to start to think about targeting those weeds. And then lastly, just the advantages and the best practices of fall focus applications, right? So applying focus in the fall is going to help us control those emerged winter annual weeds when applied with glyphosate. And it's also going to help provide that early season extended control of wild oats the following spring. Ultimately, starting weed management in the fall is a great way to spread out the workload, provide some of that peace of mind, and hopefully get the 2022 crop off to the best possible start. So now I'm going to pass it back to Jordan to wrap things up.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Nolan. Lots of great information there. I would agree. Again, I know it's been a miserable planting or a growing season for many, but with the rains, hopefully some of that soil moisture is returning, and we're certainly seeing the growth of the weeds. It's interesting to see the volunteer canola coming up and trying to make a crop again, and I think we have some pretty great solutions for that. So I did want to take a minute just to remind everyone that we are proud to be supporting our Clean Fields Community Yields program for the second year in a row. For every acre of FMC fall herbicide sold to growers between July 15th and October 31st of 2021, a donation of 10 cents per acre will be made to a local organization or charity as chosen by the retailer. So last year, we paid out over $77,000 to over 30 local community organizations. So again, this has been a really fun program for our account managers and for everybody that's part of our company. And we really want to build on that this year and give back to the communities. We understand that COVID has been hard on a lot of, let's say, these small organizations, and I live in a small town, and I understand the impact that these types of things have. So as a retailer, you just have to make a plan with your FMC account manager, and if you're a grower out there on this webinar, feel free to call your local account manager, your local retailer for a few more details. I want to say thank you to Nolan and Rachel for doing a lot of the heavy lifting today. Great work, guys. And with that, I will close off our webinar for the day. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.